and I think you were provoking me by using the term Western medicine.
Sure.
There's not two kinds of medicine. There's not Western medicine and alternative medicine. There's just medicine. If we knew that it worked, it would not be an alternative. It would just be plain old medicine.
Right.
So this is what killed Steve Jobs.
We as humans, we kind of knew or know music does something because we feel it, right? I mean, when I play music in the gym, I feel like my workouts are a little bit better, a little bit more fun. When I play music when I'm hiking, I'm less tired for some reason. But we don't necessarily, no one until recently maybe has really thought about why this happens. And you really do a good deep dive in the book on this. And the book starts with this concept of, I think you called it fusion, where your awareness changes when listening to music. Can you explain this for me? I've never heard of this.
Well, experiential fusion is a term coined by Richard Davidson at University of Wisconsin-Madison, who works closely with the Dalai Lama about altered states and meditative states such. And the idea is that it's sometimes referred to as flow, although it's slightly different, a flow state. You're in the zone if you're a basketball player, or if you're a coder, you just lose track of time. But the experiential fusion that you and I are talking about with music is that under the right circumstances, you forget that you're listening to music. You might even forget who you are. You become one with the experience. And the brain basis of this gets to a circuit called the default mode network that my colleague Vinod Menon discovered at Stanford. It is an altered state of consciousness where you're not in control of your thoughts. You're not directing them. They're self and internally directed, and we call it the mind-wandering mode. And music can certainly activate that. And it's a healthful and restorative mode to get into, and it's a good antidote or reset button for the kind of hyper-caffeinated work schedule many of us follow.
Yeah, we've talked about the DMN, the default mode network, on the show before. This is the why I come up with great ideas in the shower mode. Is that
exactly right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So why do we want to, it seems obvious now that I suppose I've answered this question, but why do we want to enter that state besides coming up with great ideas in the shower? You mentioned that it's a restorative time for the brain.
So when we talk about paying attention, it's an apt metaphor because attention, like money, is a limited capacity resource. And the cost of attending to something is metabolic. We use up blood oxygenated glucose in order to attend to things, to focus on things. And every time you make a decision, you're using a little more of that glucose. And it gets depleted and you need to take a break. What many of us do is we'll just have another cup of coffee or something.
Yeah.
And the bump of caffeine, and that doesn't really help the brain. It doesn't replenish the glucose. It just
masks the symptoms of us being tired.
Yeah, and it kicks the can a little farther down the road and all that. But what you want to do is then take a break. And this gets to the Pomodoro method of, work and break cycles.
So there is something to Mark Zuckerberg wearing the same clothes every day so he doesn't have to make a decision in the morning, or do you think that's kind of hyped up?
My favorite example of that is Barack Obama wearing the same clothes every day. But
Sure.
If you don't have to make that decision, there's a limited number of decisions you can make in a day, and no matter who you are. And there are a number of studies of this. Now we're getting a little far afield from the music idea, but I'm happy to. There was a study of Israeli court judges, and they tended to hand out more arbitrary sentences at the end of the day. So the message is, if you were going to appear in court, you want to be at the early days of the calendar.
Right.
Oh, and you don't want to be right before the lunch break when they're tired.
Oh gosh, I remember this study. Right, it's like if the judge is hungry, you're in trouble, man.
Exactly. And when they might be feeling hungry for food, but really their brain is hungry for glucose. The fuel of the brain is glucose, and it's what allows neurons to do their work. So you want to get in the default mode as a way of allowing your brain to replenish its own resources. And you can do that in a number of ways. You can go for a walk in nature, you can meditate, you can take a nap, you can listen to music.
I can just imagine, Your Honor, I'd like to submit this croissant for you to eat before we proceed here, because I really don't want my client really wants to stay out of prison.
Yeah.
And you're not you when you're hungry. It's like a Snickers
May I approach
commercial.
the bench, Your Honor?
Exactly. Do you like grapes or you want an apple? I brought a few different items here for you to choose from. Yeah, that's really scary because, of course, we don't necessarily realize that we're in that state. I assume these Israeli judges weren't thinking like, well, I'm a real bastard before lunch, so that guy's in trouble. They probably just thought, oh, this is how the day goes. I assume unless you're paying attention, you have somebody studying your decisions, you're not necessarily paying attention to your emotional state. You think you're in the same emotional state while you're at work until you go home.
Well, and as your thinking becomes cloudy, you have less of an ability to assess your own thinking.
Ah, yes. Yeah, that makes, oh man, that's kind of scary. That is a little bit scary, especially the coffee thing.
It's a version of the, what's that effect where the problem with people who lack intelligence is...
Dunning-Kruger, yes.
Thank you, Dunning-Kruger.
Yes.
The problem with as you know, you've talked about it on your program,
Sure.
People who lack intelligence fail in two accounts. One is they make bad decisions, but the other is they're overconfident because they don't realize that they lack the intelligence to make a good decision.
Exactly. And in many ways, I think a lot of us who are, well, of course, we all think we're above average, but it must in some ways be kind of nice to see the world in this completely black and white way where you go, it's not complicated. Just do this really obvious thing that I came up with because I don't understand any of the nuances to what's going on in front of me at all. I mean, it seems like, yes, your life won't work out the way that you probably want it to, but day to day, your existence is probably a hell of a lot easier. I don't know. That's a paradox I'm always finding myself caught in. Back to music, though, it does a lot of different things. According to your work, it does a lot of different things. It can reduce pain. It can enhance focus, pump you up in the gym. You mentioned Parkinson's patients use it. Tell me about that, because Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, a lot of this stuff, I have aging parents. I'm also not getting any younger. That stuff freaks me out. It sneaks up on you.
So I would start by saying that music is not a hammer. It's a toolkit. Different kinds of music do different things. It's not a single tool. It's not a hammer or a wrench or a screwdriver. It's more like a Swiss Army knife.
Okay.
And different music will do different things for you. And so you don't want to lump it all together. So in the case of Parkinson's, music that has the tempo that is more or less your walking speed, your gait, G-A-I-T, gait, will help restore the ability of Parkinson's patients to walk when they've lost that ability due to degradation of circuits in the basal ganglia and other regions that control smooth, continuous movement. Parkinson's patients often freeze. There's an internal clock or timer that allows them to time their steps.
It's like a metronome.
Basically, yes. So when that's degraded, if you play the music, we now know there are populations of millions of neurons that synchronize to the beat of the music. And that becomes an external stimulus for them to guide their movements to, and they can walk just fine. Now, you used the term metronome, and the interesting thing is a metronome doesn't work as well as music.
Huh.
I think it's because music is a lot more engaging than a metronome.
Probably, yeah. Than just the tick, tick, tick. For those who don't know, the metronome is what? It's essentially a pendulum that ticks, makes a ticking sound. Yeah. So music's a little nicer. Do the Parkinson's patients walk faster if you play music with a faster BPM?
Yep, they synchronize to the. So the trick there is to get it at their normal gait. Otherwise, they become unsteady and could fall.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
but it's the same principle why we see Olympic athletes, especially runners and marathoners, running with earbuds, to music that's at a slightly 1 or 2 beats per minute faster than they normally would run.
I didn't know this.
Then they can synchronize to that slightly faster beat and actually increase their running times.
So I wonder if so each runner would have their track that is probably at the exact cadence that they can, the max they can go. Maybe it warms up a little at the beginning. I don't know anything about running, but I assume they start sprinting as fast as they can, but as their brain and everything gets synced up, they can probably pick up speed a little bit during the sprint. I really don't know. That's fascinating. I actually never noticed that those people were wearing AirPods or earbuds at all.
During training, they are. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So during a match, they're not doing this.
I don't think so. I don't follow it that closely. Maybe I shouldn't have brought it up. But
That's
I'm
fine.
sure I'm sure some of your million listeners will write in now and be very angry.
Yes, it always happens. Someone's going to write in and say, hey, I ran in the Olympics and I was not allowed to wear AirPods or something like that because they fall out on the track and someone trips on it.
I've seen people train with them.
That makes sense. But I just assume people train with music because it's more fun to train when you're listening to music than it is to spend an hour in dead silence while you're sweating in the sun. But I don't know. Maybe that's again,
it's
a tool that I don't know I'm using.
Fun is important here. If you've got an exercise workout that's otherwise unpleasant or painful, we know that music can act as an analgesic, a painkiller, a natural painkiller, and it can act as a motivator. So these are two different tools in the Swiss Army knife of music and two different neurochemical systems. So the fun of music is driven by the dopaminergic system. Listening to music you like releases dopamine. Our lab was the first to show that. Our lab also was the first to show the analgesic, pain-killing effects. That if you listen to music you like, your brain releases its own endogenous, that is internal, opioids. So where you might otherwise be weightlifting or running and feeling some pain, the music allows you to it raises your pain threshold so that doesn't bother you anymore.
I love that. And what I find fascinating about this is some people are going, well, what kind of music? And I assume, let's say the Parkinson's patients, they need to listen to, well, they could probably listen to anything because they're syncing up their steps, but I assume older people want to listen to, I don't know, Elvis or something like that. Younger people want to listen to different things like Taylor Swift. It's whenever I go to the gym with friends, it's always one guy brings a Bluetooth speaker and I'm like, God, do I have to listen to what you're listening to? Because it really, he gets stoked for it and I put my noise canceling headphones in and I have to turn the volume up because I want slightly different music. So I guess my question is, this has to be music that we choose that we like, right? It can't just be there is music in general playing and it all has the same effect on everyone. The person who loves Elvis is probably going to have a better effect than the person who likes EDM but is subjected to Elvis. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're as you know, you're the A student yet again. So it has to be music you like. And you can't say, oh, well, classical is better or Elvis is king and he's better than Billie Eilish. I mean, look, we can leave that argument to musicologists, but if you're talking about musical effects, brain effects, what your brain cares about is what it likes. And so for a Parkinson's patient, if the tempo's right, it could be heavy metal or country or Tuvan throat singing. None of that matters. And same with an exercise workout or pain killing. And so we don't think of it in terms of genre of music or artists. Mozart is not special.
Okay.
Sorry to burst the bubble. That whole Mozart effect was bad pseudoscience.
What was that? Is that the baby thing where it's like you got to play this to your baby and they come out smarter? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's not true.
Yeah, that's good because we didn't bother with any of that.
Yeah.
But I've got so many questions and so many open loops. That's fine though. That's why I have notes. What do babies hear in the womb? Do we know that?
Well, we do. By the age of 20 weeks, the auditory system of the developing fetus is fully functional.
Okay.
And they hear through amniotic fluid, which is somewhat like listening for us to listen underwater. So like if you're at a pool and there's that music blasting, you're hearing it underwater, you'll notice you hear mostly the low frequencies, the bass notes, the percussion. So the infant brain is wiring itself up to the sounds that it heard in the womb. I suppose you could say it's a womb with a view.
How do you use it in every interview, or are we special?
No, you're special.
Thank you. It's funny. Continue.
They're wiring themselves up to the bass notes and to the rhythms, And there was a very clever experiment done by Alexandra Lamont in England many years ago where she had expectant mothers play music to their unborn children. And then a year later, she came back and played tracks from those same albums to the now 1-year-olds, a year and 3 months later, let's say. And some of the tracks she played were ones they had heard. Some of them were by the same artist that they hadn't heard. And the 1-year-olds showed a marked preference for the music they had heard in the womb and not heard since.
Really? That's interesting. That is shocking, I suppose, just because the idea that the baby would internalize that, remember that at some level from being just in utero music, when they can only hear the underwater version. Now they're hearing the higher fidelity version. It's quite amazing, because the time in the brain development and the fact that it would have sounded totally different, they still had a preference for that same track is kind of crazy, actually. Yeah. It's really impressive.
Brains are impressive.
They are, and that's one of the reasons why we do so many shows about the brain. Is the more I learn about the brain, the more I'm just like, okay, we were designed by aliens or something. It's just too incredible. Is there a cutoff for learning in neuroplasticity for kids? I know this is not directly on topic, but the whole language thing, like if you don't learn it when you're a kid, you're never going to learn it, and all that stuff.
So there's a phrase in developmental psychology called critical period. And that refers to a kind of a hard stop. If you don't learn something by a certain point, you'll never learn it.
Yeah.
And language and music are not like that. They're more like a sensitive period. They're a statistical distribution, meaning that most people have to learn some kind of language before a certain age, or they never learn to speak. And there have been these unfortunate, tragic events where a baby was locked in a closet.
Yeah, or feral children, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And if you don't learn to speak before, there are arguments about what age it is, but let's say it's 8 to 10, and you're finally rescued and they try to teach you language. That window has closed. You'll never learn to speak in complete sentences. I'm not a developmental psychologist. It might be 6 to 10, but it's a hard stop.
Sure.
But we see it in our own lives in a more gentle way, which is that if you try to learn a foreign language before the age of, say, 14, give or take a couple of years, you might very well learn to speak it without an accent and to become fluent just by osmosis, just by hearing it spoken in the home. We have lots of cases of bilinguals, trilinguals, multilingual kids who grew up in a multi-generational household speaking 5 languages, and they're equally fluent in all 5 by age 10, let's say.
Incredible.
There's no additional cost for having learned more than one language. But if you and I were to try to learn Japanese right now at our age, it would be a whole lot of work, and we might be able to, at some point, speak like a diplomat, which is what our ambassadorial service do. They send them to these training camps so they can become ambassadors to countries where they don't speak the language, but they'll always speak with an accent.
Yeah.
The accent has to be within this sensitive window. And the same is kind of true with music. If you don't hear music before a certain age, you're never going to understand it.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. But that would be hard to test. Good luck finding a kid that hasn't heard music. Although I guess feral children haven't heard music, haven't heard a language. So you really...
Or deaf children who suddenly have their hearing restored.
That
through a
makes sense.
cochlear implant or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes way more sense and is way less sad. Kind of the opposite. The cochlear implant thing is actually like a miraculous piece of technology. I'm sort of dying to know how these things work. Before we move on, though, the language thing
we can talk about that.
Do you know how they work? Because I'm always mystified at how this thing on the outside of your head just tells your brain what you're hearing. It's like a fake ear. It's just amazing.
Well, so cochlear implants have to be implanted early. They have rather mixed results for adults who go deaf. But what's happening is the way the ear works is your eardrum vibrates in and out, and that causes activity inside a structure that's coiled up like a snail shell called the cochlea. And there are hair cells, neurons that fire along. If you were to unwrap that thing and make it flat, at one end of it, there are neurons that respond to low frequencies and the other end, high frequencies. And it's sort of laid out like a piano keyboard. And when a high frequency like comes in, this one vibrates. And if it's a low frequency like this one vibrates. And they send electrochemical messages on up to the brain. If that whole apparatus isn't working, but the brain is still working, what they do is they implant electrodes in the brain to receive signals from an external microphone type thing that's inside the ear canal. The problem is that your actual brain has tens of thousands of these neurons, and we can implant, a couple of dozen of these little electrodes. And so the voices and the music you hear are not very high resolution. They're like a super bad MP3 that you're hearing from a distance with white noise embedded over it.
I see. So it's better than not being able to hear at all because you can hear the car honking or the people talking to you, which is life-changing, but you're not suddenly going to be able to hear like you or I through these earbuds getting a cochlear implant with today's technology.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Because I was just like, where do you just put wires in the brain and the brain goes, I know what to do with these. I mean, that to me is still amazing, frankly. Now, back to language learning a language. I speak several foreign languages, none of which I learned as a child. I learned them all after the age of 17, I think, was German. I can hear it's German, and it's German, Spanish, Serbian, and Mandarin Chinese, and in English. And
Ni hao ma.
Yeah, yes. So the language thing is it drives me nuts because I can hear my accent, especially in German, where I'm the most fluent, and there's almost kind of nothing I can do about it. I'm very good at imitating voices. I'm very good at imitating accents, doing video game voice characters. I just can't get every single nuanced syllable in a German word unless I practice each one over and over and over and over again. And then when I say them fast in different combinations, it just falls apart. So but then there'll be a kid who had a German nanny growing up and is taking German in college. And I'm like, oh, you bastard, you sound better than me.
Yeah.
Even though your vocabulary is a tenth of mine. And so there's definitely something to that. I've been studying Mandarin for about a dozen years. I can read and write. And one of my friends said, well, no matter how long you study this, people will be able to tell that you're not Chinese. And I had to laugh because I'm pretty sure it's not merely the language proficiency that's going to give me away as somebody who's not Chinese. But it's just, yeah, you're right. There's this sort of impossible barrier that you just can't cross. My son can speak Mandarin really, really well. And my daughter can understand Mandarin really, really well, Spanish as well. And they will have a much easier time, I think, becoming fluent and possibly accent-free in those languages just because we've started them so early. I grew up in Michigan. Nobody spoke a foreign language in my house or near me anywhere, pretty much. Maybe some Arabic or something like that, in Persian, but not in my home. And so it's just, it's very frustrating. It's amazing, though, that you can still learn this. Your brain can still learn it, but it just can't mimic it perfectly, which... it's almost like the physical control that your brain has over your ability to speak is degrades somehow or cuts off somehow. That's the part I don't totally understand because I can still dream in German. I can still think of things completely in German. I can still construct grammatically perfect German sentences. I just can't say the damn words in the way that Germans do.
Well, so, I mean, you could work as actors do with a speech coach, and you could learn to do a much, much better job. And some diplomats, if they need to, they get this training. It's very intensive, takes a lot of work. Things that would have come effortlessly to you as an 8-year-old are going to be a lot of work. It's not impossible.
Oh, that's good news.
And you can get pretty darn good. I think that a real native speaker will still notice, just in the way that you, as a Michiganer, somebody in New York will probably predict you're from the Midwest.
Yeah, they always say Canada, but yeah, it's basically.
I mean, there's a little subtle thing about the vowels. Mm-hmm. I have a weird accent because I spent um, 40 years in California, but 20 years in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to have the neutral broadcaster San Francisco accent, which was the canonic American accent that all the broadcasters wanted. I was born into that. But 20 years of Canada kind of ruined it. And
I'm
people
sorry
say,
about that.
people can hear it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, you can train and get so much better that it would be that subtle. What's happening, though, in the brain is that in the early years of life, the primary mission of the brain is to learn as much as it can about the environment it's in, because it doesn't know what it's going to need. So at the age of 2, at the age of 4, a toddler can learn any of the world's languages. It doesn't matter which country they were born in. It doesn't matter what their genetics is. And they can learn it natively. And so let's talk about the Japanese RL distinction.
Oh, yes.
Japanese don't make that distinction. We do. In certain Indian dialects, they have a different D. There's a frontodental D. So they wouldn't say Delhi as in New Delhi. They would say Delhi, New Delhi. I can make it. I can't really hear the difference. I learned to make it. In French, we've got all these different oo sounds. There's oo and there's u. And they mean different words. If I say I'm getting a book or I'm getting a book, it just sounds like I'm saying book with an accent, but in French it would be something very different. Tu versus tu, different words, different meaning.
Yeah, Chinese has this because they have tones.
Yeah, you got ma, 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 ma. They all mean different things. One of them means mother, another means lamp, another means gunpowder.
Horse.
Yeah, but to us, it's the same sound. So the infant can learn it all. But a funny thing happens around age 10. The primary mission of the brain shifts to get rid of all that unused capacity to make room for other stuff. And so it starts pruning out unused connections.
Yeah, that's such a bummer, I suppose. But it makes perfect sense, right? Because the child, the child's body, brain, doesn't know where it is in space, time, or whatever, the planet, the environment, as you mentioned.
Doesn't know what it's going to need.
Right. So it says, okay, well, maybe I need really sharp hearing because that's what we're doing here. I need to learn this language. I need to be able to decipher this kind of communication. And I suppose that makes sense why young kids who are born into traumatic or unstable environments suffer so much throughout their lives, right? Because they essentially prune a lot of neurons that they probably would have needed to, I don't know, go to college and be a successful doctor, but they retain a lot of qualities that keep them safe or alive in an environment where people are doing drugs or there's violence around them or they don't get food regularly or something like that. And that all makes sense. What ages does that sort of stop happening? Do we know? Did you tell me this already?
It's variable, but say 10 to 14.
Okay, right. Okay. So it's similar to the whole language thing as well. I'd love to talk about music and pain relief because this whole music, maybe the pain relieving effect of music is fascinating. You touched on this earlier, but if we're listening to music and it can help with pain, can it help with not just workout pain, the burn in the muscle? Can it help with, I just had back surgery and now I'm on, what's an opiate? Now I'm on OxyContin. Do I need less OxyContin if I'm playing some good jams?
Probably, yes.
Really?
And you may not need OxyContin at all, depending on how bad the pain is. You might need Tylenol or, ibuprofen, Advil.
Wow.
The brain releases its own opiates in smaller amounts than pharmaceutical levels. It has to be music you like. One thing that music can do, again, it's a Swiss Army knife. Different music maybe will relieve pain for you than will relieve anxiety. But a lot of times pain is exacerbated by anxiety or stress. We become more sensitive to it. So the mechanisms are still being worked out, but they're at a sufficient point that I wrote my new book, I Heard There Was a Secret Chord.
Links in the show notes for those who want to buy it.
Right. In the UK, it's called Music is Medicine, but it's the same book, different title. I wrote it now because I've been working with the National Institutes of Health and the White House Science Office for 10 years. And there really is a body of literature that not only shows that all these things work, but something in the underlying mechanisms. We can talk about the neurochemical signaling. We can talk about the brain, the biology of the brain that's involved. And we've seen clinical studies, randomized controlled clinical trials like you would with a new drug, where music really can work. But again, not in every case. A friend of mine just got a terrible gastrointestinal infection from eating bad food in Pakistan.
Oh my gosh, that sounds
So he goes to
horrific.
the doctor when he gets back. It was awful. The doctor says, "Oh, we'll take this antibiotic." Well, he's had to take 5 different antibiotics. And if you get strep throat, they'll give you an antibiotic. It doesn't always work. So medicine doesn't always work. And music doesn't either. It's a trial and error. But I'm mentioning it because it's not like some wonder drug that's going to solve all our problems on the one hand. But on the other hand, it's about the same as other drugs. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Is there an addiction treatment angle for people who are hooked on things like opioids, or can we use music and addiction programs to help this? Or is it just that by the time you're addicted to OxyContin, what the body produces is not going to ever be enough?
Music is a part of a lot of addiction recovery centers now, whether it's AA or Narcotics Anonymous or various treatment programs. Yes, music is a part of this. And it's a part of it for different reasons. It's not just the release of endogenous opioids, but the dopamine that motivates you to want to get better and follow healthful practices.
That's interesting. I hadn't quite thought of that. I know that shamans and medicine people throughout history, throughout the ages, have used music as part of ceremonies, as part of healing. Did you manage to research that at all? I mean, I read some of this in the book. It seems like an obvious connection. They obviously knew music did something back then, and yes, maybe some of it was just to show how serious the ceremony was, but there's a lot of, when you do, from what I've heard from friends, when you do something like psychedelics or some sort of medicine journey, there's a lot of music and drums and banging and things like that go along with some of these ceremonies, and they're there for a reason.
Well, so you're asking the question that any serious scientist would ask. How do you fractionate out the effects of the music versus the dance and the community? How much of it, if you could assign a percentage, how much is attributed to the music per se versus these other paramusical aspects? And it's hard to say. It's very hard to come up with a controlled experiment.
Yeah.
So in the shamanistic tradition, either contemporarily or 20 or 40,000 years ago, it was almost always the case that there was a large group of people. There was a leader, the faith healer, who was a very revered person in the community who had special knowledge and special skills. There were often herbal supplements of one kind or another.
Yes.
Wink,
Air
wink.
quotes. Exactly.
And the dancing and the community, and it would go on for hours. There were typically trance states induced. So we try to do these experiments where we'll give people music or not music, and we'll give it to them with dance or not dance. But what's a control for dance that involves body movement that isn't dancing? And what's a control for a large group of people that are really pulling for you, to bring a bunch of your enemies together and have them sing songs that they, ding dong, the witch is dead, kind of, get out of here?
Yeah.
It's very complicated to partition these out, but the fact is that the way we use music now in clinics and VA hospitals and even for self-remedy is that just listening or playing seems to have a substantial and statistically significant effect.
That's really good news and very, very fascinating. I do want to separate the sound healing from what we're talking about right now, I want to separate music and therapy from nonsense pseudoscience. Like, this bowl produces a frequency that will shrink your tumor. Can we do that briefly?
Yeah, so I'm a scientist as well as a musician. And when I'm wearing my scientist hat, I just want to see what the data have to say. And I go in with no preconceptions. The data are there to tell a story. My job is to figure out what the story is, but not my job is also not to be distracted by shiny things and stories that don't fit the data. So I've been part of sound baths, and I've been to particular sound baths that play Tibetan bowls or crystal alchemy glass bowls, and they're very, very emotionally moving.
I agree.
Spiritually moving. And I have a friend named Geraldine Glass who runs a therapy practice. She has a company called Crystal Cadence. I brought her to perform in front of directors from all 27, I think there's 27 institutes of the National Institutes of Health a year ago. The director of the NIH was there and a lot of scientists, and I would say all of us were very moved. Now, if you ask her what she's doing, she'll say, well, and I'm going to get this wrong, but this bowl is tuned to C sharp, and so it's supposed to lift your mood, and this B flat bowl is for treating this and that, and the A bowl that's made out of this particular crushed gemstone thing is supposed to treat anxiety. I don't believe that any of that's true. I also don't believe that when a great pianist like Horowitz or Kissin or Alicia de Rocha or whoever it is, when they're playing a difficult piece, you'll see them do this. They'll do this with their hand after. Now, the mechanics of the
waving the
piano,
hand in front of the face. Yeah, for people who aren't watching, they're waving the hand sort of in front of their off to the side in a circular motion.
So after they release a note, their hand will sort of go off into the air in some grand gesture. Now, the physics of the piano is that once your fingers have hit the keys, the way you release it has no impact on the sound at all. And what you do with your hand after has nothing to do with it. But, maybe it has something to do with the mood they're in or the embodiment of the emotion or something. But I think it's mostly for the audience's benefit that they do these grand gestures with their hands.
Sure.
They can believe anything they want to believe. I've met really wonderful musicians who think that the music is in their fingers, not in their brains. And I have to say, well, if we scoop your brain out of your head, you're not going to be able to play anymore. And they say, oh, yes, I would, because it's in my fingers. And I say, well, no, you wouldn't. So
I can't believe they argue with you on this. I mean, it's pretty, well, who knows? It's a bold argument.
I play music. I work with musicians who are brilliant, and I don't want to say anything that's going to interfere with their process.
Sure.
How they get there in a way that will move me and make me remember a performance for 40 years or transform my mood for a week or more. I don't care how they get there. And so when we're talking about the bowls, if a bowl player believes that this frequency is going to have that effect, whether it has that effect on me or not, it's having some effect. And but I do want to say there is no science at all that says that particular frequencies are associated with particular mood states or particular therapeutic things. And there's this whole pseudoscientific nonsense about how you have to listen to 438 hertz tuned music instead of 440 or 432. It's a magic number. And if you look at 432 and you multiply it, it's the distance between here and the moon. And it's the number of seconds that it takes the Earth to revolve around the sun. And it's the the heartbeat of your cells or something nonsense. It's none of those things.
I also don't have a problem with, going to a Tibetan sound bath with a group of friends after we went on a hike. We did this recently. I was in Laos, and it was like, oh, this person's going to play the bowl. It was relaxing. I slept well afterwards. Might have slept well anyway because I hiked all day, but it doesn't matter. The only beef I have with this stuff is where people go, you don't need harmful drugs. That's Western medicine, or you don't need big pharma to pump you full of chemotherapy. You just need to listen to this sound and it will help you. That is where this stuff gets dangerous, when people stop looking for real health cures or get confused between what is actually effective medicine for a thing that can kill them or hurt them. That's where I sort of have to draw the line. I'm not trying to rain on people's parade because they have a brass bowl in their living room that has a little thing that they like to do in the evening. That's harmless. It's a fun hobby.
But if you're going to use that as a cure for cancer instead of using medicine, you and I talked about this 8 years ago or so when we were talking about my book, A Field Guide to Lies. And I remember the conversation, and my recollection is that we talked about the idea that, and I think you were provoking me by using the term Western medicine.
Sure.
There's not two kinds of medicine. There's not Western medicine and alternative medicine. There's just medicine. If something's been shown to work, we call it medicine. If it's not been shown to work, there are some people out there who will call it alternative medicine. But it's not an alternative. If we knew that it worked, it would not be an alternative. It would just be plain old medicine.
Right.
So this is what killed Steve Jobs.
Yes.
Steve Jobs got pancreatic cancer, and he went to this charlatan named Dean Ornish, who said, "Oh, I can fix that with yoga and diet," and maybe there were bowls involved. I don't know. And, it killed him. He was going to die anyway, but, he put all his faith in this weird thing. And when he changed his mind and saw it wasn't working, it was way too late for him to use actual treatments.
Right. Did he have a really bad prognosis? Because I swear I read somewhere that he had a very treatable cancer initially, and it just spread because he didn't do anything real to treat it.
I haven't looked into this in 10 years, but I know that he didn't like what the doctors told him.
Right. Okay.
And so he found another doctor.
Yes.
Who told him what he wanted to hear.
Dangerous.
All right, a quick break. I'm going to tell you about something that'll actually make your life a little bit easier. I regularly take shots of Ketone IQ plus caffeine from HVMN. It is 5 grams of ketones, 100 milligrams of caffeine from green tea. So no sugar, no crash, just clean, focused energy. Now, ketones are molecules that your body naturally produces during fasting, intense exercise, or a low-carb, high-fat diet, so aka ketosis. And when glucose, carbs, aren't readily available, your liver breaks down fat into ketones, which then become an alternative fuel source for your brain and muscles. And our body likes using ketones because they're a high-efficiency fuel, especially for the brain and the muscles. Ketone IQ from HVMN skips that whole process, gives you pure, drinkable ketones, so you get the benefits of ketone energy without having to fast for days on end or go full keto. I take it before I hit the gym. It gives me that steady, locked-in energy without making me feel like I'm kind of vibrating a little bit. And I also take it before I need to do a show. Same deal. I feel focused, same steady energy. And it's not just me. Team Visma, Lisa Bike, literally the best pro cycling team in the world. They use Ketone IQ to fuel their races. These guys won the Tour de France twice, dominated all 3 Grand Tours last year. Olympians, Ironman champions, they're all on this stuff because it works. So if you want to try it, go to ketone.com/Jordan. You'll get 30% off your first subscription order and a free 6-pack of Ketone IQ. That's these little things right here. Get energy that actually works. Ketone.com/Jordan. Links in the description. If you're thinking about starting a business or you already have one and maybe logo or branding design is not your strong suit, you're going to love Design.com. With Design.com, creating a standout logo is as easy as it gets. You just pop in your business name and your industry, and in seconds, you're going to get thousands of custom logos to choose from. Every design is handcrafted by top designers and exclusive to Design.com, so you're getting something unique. Once you find a design that you like, you can customize the fonts, the colors, the layouts to make it yours. Then you download all those assets and you're good to go. And Design.com doesn't just stop at logos. They've got tools to help you create all of your branding materials, from website to social media posts to business cards, all perfectly aligned with your brand. If you already have a logo, you can upload it and you get instant access to thousands of design templates that actually match your brand's look and your color scheme. So this tool saves you a lot of time. It lets you focus on growing your business instead of getting stuck in the weeds with marketing materials. With a 4.8-star Trustpilot rating, Design.com is legit amazing. It's run by a friend of mine. The company's been around for a while. They really do care about their customers. Try it for free at design.com/Jordan. That's design.com/Jordan.
Tell me about music and memories. I find that I will listen to a song and immediately be transported back to a time where, I don't know, maybe that song was popular when I lived in Germany, or maybe it was popular when I went to my high school prom or something like that. And you get those feelings come back. They come rushing back. That's why so many couples have a song, things like that. Is music generally anchored somehow to memories?
Very much so. Not all music, but music that's associated with a particular time and place. And this is what Marcel Proust was writing about when he wrote about the Madeleines, the cookies, or what we write about with smells, particular odors. If there's an odor that's ubiquitous and familiar to you and part of your life every day, that won't do anything. But every once in a while you get a whiff. I had a bar of soap that my grandmother used a very particular soap, and I associated that smell with her. And when she died, she had 2 or 3 unused bars of this soap. And she died in 1987, and I would use the soap now and then, and it would instantly bring back a flood of memories of what she was like and what it was like to be with her. And it's because our senses are a trigger for memories, and most everything that you've experienced is in your memory system somewhere. The trick is to pull it out from all the things that are in there. And so you need something unique. The nature of music, at least in the last 60 years or so, is that we have popular music. We have songs that get played for a lot,
Yes.
for a relatively short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
And so, Happy Birthday and the national anthem and things like that, where you hear them all the time, they can invoke certain memories, but they're less likely to than that song you heard the summer you were 13, or the song that was playing when you had your first kiss, or the song that was playing in that new country you were living in. Those get attached to the memories, and all the sights and sounds and people and events are attached. Memory is multifactorial. It's pictures, it's sounds, it's smells, it's tastes, it's touch.
Does it work for bad things as well as, hey, I remember this song. I loved it. We used to play it in college and go cruise around in the car and meet girls. Does it work for work? Does it also function for bad things? Can you hear a song and you're like, oh, this was when my parents, got divorced. This song was on the radio. But
absolutely. It absolutely works for that. And a lot of people who have had traumas, if there was music playing or a sound, a non-musical sound, the trauma can be re-invoked or relived or experienced through the sound. This is why soldiers who come back from the war with PTSD, if a car backfires, they duck for cover instinctively, and it can put them in a hyper-vigilant and traumatized state for days or weeks or years that they can't escape from. Just ordinary environmental noises. The wrong song comes on, same thing.
Yeah, one of my earlier memories that I'll never forget, because I'd never seen anything like this, a friend's dad was driving us to lacrosse practice. This is sometime in the early 90s. And we were stopped at a red light, and the cars behind us started to honk. And my friend was like, Dad, go. Dad, go. And he froze, and he goes, you guys hear that? And we were like, yeah, the horns. And he goes, no, you guys hear that? And we were like, he's like yelling at his dad. He's like, go, go. And he goes, there's a helicopter. You hear that, guy? And he had been in Vietnam, and he got so triggered by this helicopter that was quite loud, and it was low. So it was really extra loud, and he just froze, and he couldn't drive. He forgot where he was. He didn't know. Seemingly he didn't know anything about what was going on in that particular moment. I don't know why that happened. Recently, I emailed my friend about this, and I said, do you remember that? And he goes, that did not only happen one time. That definitely checks out as something that would have happened with my dad. So that was really disturbing. Yeah.
You're in a war.
Yeah.
In a dangerous zone. A low helicopter can mean the matter of life or death. It could be somebody coming to rescue you. It could be somebody coming to kill you. And you have to freeze and take an assessment of the situation that really could kill you. And in that moment, it's so horrible, the decision you have to make. Do I run towards it? Do I run away from it? Is this friendly or is this enemy? It can be paralyzing.
Yeah, that
decades later.
Decades later, that was one of those things where I just remember looking at my friend and being like, "What the hell, dude?" And he was just like, "I don't know, whatever." And I remember his mom drove us the next time, and we were like, "What was that about?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, something about Vietnam, and it happens. It's very rare, but he never drove us to lacrosse practice again." I have a feeling when I told my parents, they were probably like, "Look, you got to handle this. I'm not letting my kid in the car with you." I mean, I feel bad for him. Obviously, this is something that affected him deeply, but I just found that to be so strange, and it makes sense that the trauma and that sound are linked. I hope he's in a better place now because helicopters are everywhere. So, all right, if music can do all of this, can help us. You mentioned flow state earlier. We didn't really dive into it, but it can help us recall good memories, bad memories, help us calm down, help us get amped up. If music can do all that, why doesn't, say, Spotify take my heart rate and physiological stress levels from my Apple Watch or my Oura Ring and suggest something to calm me down or to help my workout get better? I feel like Daniel Ek needs to get on this.
They will.
Yeah.
They are working on it.
Are they? Okay.
And Apple is working on it. Apple has Apple Music.
That makes sense.
In the foreseeable future, you will be able to opt in to letting the thing that you listen to music on, the streaming service you listen to music on, communicate with your Oura Ring or your smartwatch, your smart device, and maybe it'll alert you and say, "Hey, your blood pressure's getting a little high. Would you like me to play you relaxing music?" Or maybe you'll opt into the automatic, whether you want it to or not. It'll start playing you relaxing music to lower your heart rate. And we know there is music that can do that in general for most people most of the time. But we also know there's music that does it particularly for you. They already know this, I'm sure, or could know it if they wanted to, because many of us have these devices that are monitoring. So I imagine a world in which music as medicine becomes invisible to us. Oh, you're on your way to the gym. The GPS knows you're on the way to the gym, and it knows from past activity that you're about to get on the treadmill. It also knows that, that cup of coffee you had this morning didn't really do the trick and you're a little bit sleepy. And so it'll play you AC/DC or Van Halen or whatever pumps you up in the car on the way to the gym. And then you get there and it'll keep playing it. You've had a fight with somebody and it'll know what music will calm you. That's on the horizon. And we haven't used the two letters AI yet in this conversation. But
go for it.
I think what AI can do for us here is whatever music might be relaxing to you today may not always relax you all the time because your brain is constantly changing. Your different events and different physiological occurrences can lead you to have different kinds of anxiety, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so ideally, what AI would do is it would start with a tried and true, this always calms Jordan down, and monitor in real time whether it's actually calming you down. And if it's not, it would get something else from your playlist. Or there are now 200 million songs across all the streaming services. It would find something you haven't heard that could become your new go-to thing and test it in real time. See whether your body really reacts.
Seems like AI could actually just make music that it knows I will like in that moment. Yeah. That'll be interesting. I think it's quite fascinating that music therapy is not only effective because, let's say, it's pleasurable, it actually is doing something in the brain. And you mentioned the immune system in the book. You mentioned that music discovery can affect our immune system. What's going on with music discovery and our immune system? That seems... Why would we even evolve something like that ability?
Well, music affects the immune system, and why we evolved that, the why question with evolution is always tricky.
Yeah. Any guesses, I suppose, as to why we evolved that is a better way to phrase it.
Yeah. So we know that music can affect the immune system in several ways. Listening to pleasurable music can increase levels of immunoglobulin A. an important antibody that travels to the site of mucosal infections and help fights them off. We know that music that is pleasurable to you can increase the production of natural killer cells and T cells, also important for fighting disease and infection. Some music can lead to reductions in inflammation. Why music does this and why the immune system responds to it, we don't know. But it does. And so, evolutionary reason, my guess is that we evolved over tens of thousands of years with music, and music co-evolved with us, so that the kinds of music we made and gravitated towards was the kind of music that made us feel good. And so, it was a sort of iterative process where one changes and the other changes in response to it. So they co-evolved.
That is intriguing. And it seems that our bodies really have evolved alongside music. I mean, music is ancient, right? I suppose it makes some sense. It's just sort of mystifying to me why we would integrate music so thoroughly into our brains. I just don't understand. And I suppose we never will. I've heard people who stutter normally don't always stutter when singing. What's going on here?
So stuttering, like Parkinson's, is a motor disorder. It's a failure to regulate movements in a particular order and at a particular time. People who stutter are unable to get the words out in the right order and at the right time. The thing about music is that it has its own intrinsic tempo to it. Language, normal spoken language, doesn't. We sort of say things the way we want, when we want, but when we're singing, there's a time when the word has to come. And so if you can sing and not have any disfluency, it's because of music's internal clock that carries you along with it. So Elvis Presley, who we talked about earlier, was famously a stutterer when he spoke. He didn't stutter when he sang. He also acted, but he probably, when he was acting, memorized the script with a certain cadence. James Earl Jones, the actor, is very disfluent and stutters when he gives interviews, but when he's in a role, like in Star Wars, or many of the other great roles he has to be able to memorize the script with a cadence and work out ahead of time what the rhythm will be. And once he does that, these rhythmic circuits in the brain, which are separate from the language circuits, take over. They effectively hijack the speech system, and you're in the music mode.
That's so, that to me, it seems like a miracle. And my mom was a speech therapist. I know teaching people how to manage a stutter is very tricky. It doesn't always stick. It's easier when they're kids, going back to what we discussed earlier in the show. So this seems like a really good insight into how to get around something like that or manage something like that. What about Tourette's? You mentioned this in the book as well. Is there's a similar effect here as well?
Tourette's is, by definition, a motor disorder characterized by tics, unwanted movements. There are some versions of Tourette's that include swearing uncontrollably. Mm-hmm. And at least with the tics, musicians who have Tourette's, such as Billie Eilish, the tics almost disappear when they're performing. Again, because the music system, in the way that singers can bypass the speech system, the music system kind of takes over the motor system in its service, in the service of playing music. And so the tics disappear, and it's an island of respite for them. They may not disappear completely, but they're certainly reduced.
That's incredible. So it must feel so good for somebody who is constantly suffering from these tics to play music and sing as much as possible.
Yeah, it does.
Wow. What about MS, multiple sclerosis in music? I've got a lot of friends who've had this. It's something that scared a lot of us because we were all getting older, and some of my friends just suddenly had symptoms of this. Can you describe what this is and what it does to your body?
Multiple sclerosis is a neurodegenerative disease that attacks the myelin, which is the insulating sheath around the neurons. Neurons are sending electrical signals, and like the wiring in your house or in that microphone that's in front of you, they need to be insulated so they don't short circuit or arc. And so, the wires in your home have rubber around them or some rubberized plastic or insulating material. The wires, as it were, in your brain have myelin, which is a fatty white substance. And that's why we call it white matter. It's after the white insulating sheath. When that sheath becomes degraded due to the disease, it causes a lot of things. Memory trouble. Your neurons are not speaking to each other properly. So memory trouble, movement disorders, fatigue, and music plays a role there in all of them, but for different reasons. Music motivates you through the dopaminergic system, so to help you get over the fatigue. It can help with memory problems to the extent that music can serve as a cue for some memory. And generally, and in the way of Parkinson's, it can help people with MS to walk and move more continuously and speak better.
It's very scary that this comes from, I've read some research that this comes from the same virus that causes mononucleosis, which I had that in college.
Epstein-Barr virus, yes.
Epstein-Barr, yeah. So I think I got it from going abroad and kissing girls in bars or something in Panama. I mean, who knows?
They called it the kissing disease.
That's right.
Because it was transmitted by saliva.
Yeah. That is just really scary. Why do some people get this and other people don't? Do you know?
I'm not an epidemiologist.
Right.
Caveat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a physician. I'm just a simple country neuroscientist. But what I do know about Epstein-Barr is that if you were to test the entire population, something like 90% of us would have Epstein-Barr antibodies.
I see.
Even still now, you would have them. The question is whether you become symptomatic. So mononucleosis, Epstein-Barr, as far as I know, same virus. Mononucleosis is a manifestation of the virus. Some people have a recurrence of it later in life, like come back. The mono can come back 10 or 15, 20 years later. Sometimes it's diagnosed as chronic fatigue syndrome. Sometimes it can become narcolepsy if there are other factors. But most of us are able to live with it and keep it in check. Some of us can't. We don't really understand the body's ability to fight these invaders very well, which is why long COVID is still a thing. We haven't figured that out. Some people get it, some don't. Seems not to be particularly related to which strain of COVID you got or how severe your case was. So the brain is, Captain Kirk used to say space, the final frontier.
Yeah.
I think the brain is the final frontier. It's a vast, undiscovered, uncharted territory.
It can be a little bit scary for those of us that are up in our 40s and seeing our stuff happening to our friends, and it starts to get real. You mentioned with the stuttering and the Tourette's that there's almost like an alternative pathway in the brain for some of these things. I think a decade ago or so, we talked about paradoxical kinesia. So how an old grandma can fly into action and maybe move super fast in an emergency, or how someone can lift a car off of their baby, if it's trapped under the car. Is this the same kind of thing? How does this work?
I don't know much about paradoxical kinesia.
You don't? Okay.
I know that it exists, but no, I think this is different. I think that is attributed to a sudden burst of adrenaline and some other factors. We're not talking about adrenaline here in a fight or flight emergency response.
Got it.
We're just talking, I think a better analogy is what happened with Gabrielle Giffords, a congresswoman from Arizona, shot in the head in 2011. And she was shot the bullet entered a part of the brain that is involved in speech, Broca's area, and she could not speak after the injury. But she learned to speak, and you can hear her give speeches now in 2025, and she sounds quite fluent. she used what was a technique called melodic intonation therapy. It turned out and this has been well known for 100 years, some people who can't speak can still sing. And so she was taught to sing things, simple things, but necessary things like, show me to the bathroom, or I need a glass of water. And by repeating these songs in the intact music system, the musical circuitry is separate from the speech circuitry, and you're still making very similar movements with the jaw and the lips and the tongue and the larynx, but it's music, so it's a different system. And this gets to a fascinating evolutionary issue, which is that the brain wasn't designed. It's a Swiss Army knife that evolved to solve a bunch of different adaptive problems. And so there's a speech system that evolved separately from the music system. And of course, if you were to design it now, you'd design it entirely differently. You'd make them a single system. Why wouldn't they be? They use a lot of the same capacities, a lot of the same operations, but they evolved separately. For that matter, the neurochemical system that evolved, there are 100 different neurochemicals. It's crazy. You don't need 100 neurochemicals. And by the way, the neurochemicals don't do anything themselves.
Okay.
We say a dopamine motivates you and oxytocin makes you feel bonded. That's a very sloppy shorthand.
Okay.
Your listeners are going to hear this first because most neuroscientists won't tell you this. What they do is there are circuits that make in the brain that relax you, circuits that make you feel bonded to other people, circuits that motivate you. Those circuits evolved separately from one another, and it just so happens that they evolved so that a very particular neurochemical binds with receptors and activates the opening of those circuits. So we think of it as like a key in a lock.
Yes, a key. Yeah, that makes sense.
But if you were to design it from scratch, you might only need 4 neurochemicals. An excitatory one that is short-acting, like adrenaline, is short-acting. It doesn't stay around for a long time. An inhibitory one that's short-acting, and then a long-acting excitatory and inhibitory. Long-acting things like immune function. So, 4 neurochemicals would do the trick, but we have 100.
Yep. Wow. All because they evolved separately at different times, different ways. So it's just redundant. But it works out for somebody who has a little bit of brain damage, right? Because they can use that other system to communicate in ways that the other system is now damaged. So is that why if someone has a stroke, they can, similar to a gunshot wound to the head, they can maybe sing what they need or sing communication or something along those lines, as opposed to speaking if they can't speak.
Yeah, there are a lot of demonstrations of this, and some recent work being done at UC Berkeley by Robert Knight, my colleague there, where a patient came in just recently who had a stroke and spoke in what we would call a word salad. He could not say the words to happy birthday. When he tried, he said words that didn't belong in it, and he couldn't get full words out, and he was like, closet, just
okay. Poor guy.
But he could sing happy birthday perfectly fine. And so Bob Knight taught him, the guy is a grandfather. He likes going to the meat counter, the butcher, to order pork loin. So Bob taught him a little song. Go to the meat counter, sing the song when you want to order pork loin, because you can't speak to the butcher. But so the guy goes and he sings to the butcher.
I'm trying to imagine what that is. I'd like pork loin, por favor. I'd like pork loin, por favor. Does he have to finish the whole thing, or is it just like one line? Okay.
Yeah.
Because the butcher could be like, I got it. I see you every Tuesday. I know. I know already. Oh, man. That would be
today, could you give me some pork loin? Tomorrow, I'd like some hot dogs.
Oh, we're laughing at somebody who had a stroke. We are terrible people. No, I'm not laughing at that person.
He laughs about it too. He's
situation, of course, I would hope so. The situation is, hey, look, he can communicate after a stroke. It's amazing. Right. There's nothing more kind of awesome than that. What about music instead of or in addition to drugs? I mentioned the pain killing thing earlier, but what about conditions like dementia? There's drugs for this. Do they work well? I don't really know. I don't think they're kind of cure-alls or even highly effective at this point. Are people working with music on this, or is it just sort of in the research phase?
We cannot cure dementia. We can possibly slow it down
Okay.
with drugs. And there are some experimental drugs for this and some standard drugs. Rivastigmine is one of the promising approaches the last time I looked, which is about 4 years ago. There are other things coming down the pike, these new GLP-1s that, gave us Ozempic.
Yeah.
In the next 3 to 5 years, I think we'll see some really dramatic movement there. But the role of music that's most apparent is that oftentimes people with dementia are experiencing a loss of memory such that they don't recognize loved ones. They don't know where they are or how they got there, and they may not even recognize themselves in a mirror. It's
Wow.
profoundly disorienting.
Yeah. Jeez.
And it causes many of them to just sort of crawl into themselves, fold in on themselves, because nothing makes sense. Or it can cause them to become violent because people are approaching them and kissing them, and they don't recognize them. And why are you kissing me? I don't know you. It's depending on your personality and how you respond to being kissed. It could be aversive.
Sure. Sure.
Or why are you talking to me like in that familiar tone? It's disrespectful. We just met. They can become very agitated, violent. If you play music of their youth, a principle of memory, and I know you're fascinated by memory. You should have my colleague on who just wrote a book about memory, Charan Ranganath.
Oh, he was on. Yeah, he was
good.
on recently, 6 months ago. That was episode 1002. So it was actually June 2024. Yeah, super interesting guy. The memory thing is just, I will never not be fascinated by it because it's almost like this superpower that humans have that works in all these funny, mysterious ways. And now we're finding it interacts with music, apparently. I mean, it's endless amounts of ways to be fascinated by memory and the brain. I know we're running a little bit short on time, so I want to make sure I ask these questions because I've got some bangers. Go ahead. Yeah, finish your thought.
Where I was going with this
Sure.
is that one of the principles of memory is that the memories that get in earlier are the strongest and the most robust in many cases. Mm-hmm. So you play a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, profound memory loss, a song from their youth, and it suddenly reconnects themselves. They reconnect with the self they thought they had lost.
That must feel like a massive relief in some ways.
And the relief can last for a long time. It can pull them out of themselves if they were catatonic or withdrawn and make them social again. Or if they were aggressive, it can calm them.
That's good to know. It seems like that stuff should be on play from wake up until bedtime in any care home instead of some of the depressing, silence, frankly, or loud-ass TV that you hear in those places. What about music and sex? How can that help? Asking for a friend.
Well, so a lot of people like making love with music on. Mm-hmm. For one thing, there are a lot of different kinds of sexual activity. There's quickies, there's longies, there's different tempos to sex. Both in the act itself, the movements, but also in the arc of it. Is this something that's, we only have 10 minutes before the kids get home, or, we've got a nice evening. Let's take our time and explore each other for an hour or so, or two. Music can fill the silence in the background in a way that allows you to feel like you can relax and slow down if that's what you want to do. It can also guide the movements so that the sex becomes like a dance. The tempo, you can synchronize to it. It can also help invoke that default mode network. I think one of the, there's goal-oriented sex and non-goal-oriented sex. And by that I mean, most things we do have goals. There can be orgasm-motivated sex and just sex that's motivated by a desire for closeness and a connection with another person. It may end up in an orgasm or it may not. And the goal of it is not necessarily to have an orgasm. And it can still be very pleasurable and fulfilling and as rewarding as non-orgasmic sex, believe it or not. And so the music kind of gives you permission to have that more leisurely kind. And if you're having trouble getting into that zone, the music can create a separate space in the way we might light incense or change the lighting. Or if you're not somebody who has a glass of wine all the time, the wine sort of sets this apart as a separate event and a separate thing we're going to do together. So it's all about setting a space and a consciousness and an intention. And there people would use different kinds of music that's meaningful to them for these different experiences. Is that helpful?
It is helpful, and I love the idea that we can sort of utilize music for things like this. What about depression? So many people suffer from this, whether it's severe or minor. Can you share some insights into how music interacts with our brain to, well, ideally alleviate symptoms of depression at some level? Is that a thing?
It is, and it needs to match the state you're in.
Okay.
If you're depressed, you need to play depressing music.
What? Really? You'd think it'd be the opposite.
Well, if you're depressed, you're typically in that situation because you're feeling to some degree misunderstood.
Okay.
Happy music is just a bunch of other people who don't understand you.
I see.
Depressing music allows you to feel that you are understood. It allows you to live with that experience and thus overcome it.
That is fascinating because if I were to sort of jury rig this on my own, right? Oh, I'm feeling down. I probably would just say, all right, Spotify, happy music. And then I would just be annoyed that this happy music was playing while I felt like crap. So it makes sense, right? You almost need to start from a period from a point where the music is relating to me on my level. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. How can someone incorporate music into their daily life as a form of maybe self-care for mental health? Do you just wake up and assess your mood and play music according to that mood? Is that helpful at all?
Yeah, it's helpful to have playlists, to have go-to playlists. If you're, if you're a real planner, as I am, I have a playlist that have as part of my advanced medical directive that if I'm in the hospital and I can't speak for myself and I'm just, languishing there, play me these songs.
Wow. And they're songs from your youth? Is this going back
Not all. I'm not talking about if I have Alzheimer's, but songs that are meaningful to me and that will comfort me and help me to feel part of something larger rather than stuck in my own self, to help me feel connected to the universe or to my own past and hopefully a future. I
see. So this isn't something where you're incapacitated and this music will break you out of it. It's maybe something that'll just make you feel better.
You're right. You're right now. I should have two. I should have an Alzheimer's playlist and a chemotherapy playlist.
Before you forget to make it, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All jokes aside, but yeah, before you can't make it.
Yeah.
This is amazing. What about lo-fi beats? Are you familiar with this? Of course you are. There's a whole channel, Lo-Fi Girl, right? When you're studying or something, you put this on, and this has just gained massive popularity for studying and focusing. Is there something in the structure of this that makes it effective, or is it just happen to be trendy?
There might be. There is something about entraining gamma waves of your brain to music. It's still early days. I would say it's not pseudoscience, but it's not yet in the evidence base.
Got it. Okay. I just wondered if the simplicity of lo-fi music maybe allowed the brain to enter some kind of flow state more easily. I don't know.
It might.
Stabbing in the dark.
Yeah. Some
people claim that lo-fi music enhances memory and learning. Also no evidence for this yet?
I don't know. Psyche Louis at Northeastern University, a tremendously talented researcher in this field, has a new with her collaborator Ed Large at University of Connecticut, a new treatment for Alzheimer's that involves gamma wave lights flashing and music that has activity in the gamma wave as a way of slowing the progression of Alzheimer's. I just saw a demo of it a few days ago, and it was very impressive.
Are there scenarios where certain types of music might hinder rather than help learning or focus? Like, is it, hey, we don't know if lo-fi music helps you focus, but we do know that heavy metal sure doesn't, or something like? Is there anything that's sort of anti-focus, anti-learning, or is that not a thing?
There is no evidence that listening to music while you study will help.
Oh.
There have been 1,000 papers on this, literally
Okay.
1,000 papers. I mean, proper music, not lo-fi beats, but, music like you would have on the radio.
Sure.
In the old days. Heavy metal, jazz, classical, no evidence that it actually helps you study. And in fact, evidence that it creates a state of divided attention where the results are worse. The problem is that it's so much more fun that we get deceived into thinking we're doing better, but we're not.
I see. That's funny. I never thought about that. I think for me, I would listen to lo-fi beats when I'm trying to focus on something, but what it does is it blocks out the a-holes talking in the library that are distracting me. And so that might be the only use of it. But honestly, a good pair of noise-canceling headphones or shooting headphones or something where I couldn't hear anything is probably actually better. Yeah, that makes sense. This is all amazing stuff. Music can heal you, can help you in some ways, help you get rid of pain, help you get laid. Excellent. What about bad or even evil uses of music? Is there music being used for the dark side at all? Speaking of James Earl Jones.
Well, certainly we use music to intimidate.
Okay.
Army bands may have... the walls of Jericho came down with, Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho. The walls came tumbling down. The idea is that loud music that is not the music of your tribe can be intimidating. The Americans drove Manuel Noriega out of his compound in Panama when nothing else worked. We turned off the water, the electricity, the air conditioning, blockaded the food. The only thing that made him give up was heavy metal music blasted at 160 decibels. He couldn't take
That's right.
it.
Wasn't it Van Halen or was it Metallica?
I think it was Van Halen. But
Van Halen, right? Yeah.
there'd be some poetic justice if they had played Jump. But
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I remember reading about this, and it's funny, man. He's in there. He can't wash his hands. He can't sleep, and he's just like, I can't take it with the guy with the leather bodysuit. I'll go to prison for the rest of my life. Yeah.
But we also the less obvious one is that although the music may not be intended to intimidate or disturb, it often does. When we ask people what are among the most unpleasant features of modern life, often in the top 5 is unwanted music in public places, piped-in music.
Bluetooth, or the guy with the Bluetooth speaker on the subway.
Oh my God!
Know who they are.
Yeah. So
they're doing this on purpose, right? This is an attention thing. What do you make of that? I know we're way off topic, but those people, they have to know I'm the most annoying person here.
It was a beautiful pastoral afternoon in the countryside, and some guy came in with what must have been 2,000 watts of subwoofers in his pickup truck. And you could hear him coming from half a mile away, and then he just parked his car in the next to the reservoir and played his loud music, and it made it miserable for everybody. I don't know what that's about, but it was very obnoxious and unpleasant, and I left.
That's those people. There's a special place in hell for people who decide to ruin environments for everyone else. It's got to be an attention thing. I would love to hear people's theories on why this happened. If you're a person who does this or used to do this, please email me and tell me why you did that. I got to know. It's got to be an attention thing. I can't think of any other reason. Back to the topic at hand.
Or it's just that you're so self-absorbed, you don't care what other people are doing or think.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, some sort of disorder, I suppose, at that point. Where do you see the future of music therapy and neuroscience heading in the next decade?
Well, there
with
is
the
an
stuff.
evidence base now for music therapies
Great.
and music interventions. Music therapies are those done by a therapist. Music interventions are what you might treat your loved ones, or how you might treat yourself, or a doctor, a dentist playing music in the dentist's office. That's not a music therapist, it's a music intervention. We've seen increased recognition that this is a real thing by healthcare providers. The state of New Jersey, Blue Shield, Blue Cross in the state of New Jersey now reimburse for musical therapies. Massachusetts is giving out 12 vouchers for free arts therapy as a preventative to help people stay healthy in the first place. Francis Collins, former head of the NIH, is working to get legislation passed that will get Medicare to pay for music therapies and music interventions. Maybe even for people who otherwise couldn't afford it, elderly people, to have their Spotify prescription paid for, a subscription paid for as a prescription by Medicare, Medicaid.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be. Now your Spotify price has gone up to $1,100 a month because insurance is paying for it. Oh, and you can only access these 5 playlists. Sorry. Anyway, that's a whole different podcast, I suppose, on the future of the American healthcare system. Thank you so much for coming on to discuss this. I just find it so amazing what the brain can do. I love the fact that music interfaces with our minds in such a primal way. And I think people, by the way, who love music as much as you do are going to get a lot more out of the book. Because I will admit, a lot of the stuff in the book was like terminology, music stuff. Of course, I understood what you were saying, but a lot of the finer points probably went over my head as somebody who doesn't play a musical instrument and is not as much of a music fan as you. I recommend reading the book for people who like music and for people who don't care about it per se. But I think people who especially love music are really going to love the book as well for other reasons.
I tried to write it keeping in mind the dictum of The Simpsons,
which
is The Simpsons is a cartoon that works at 2 levels.
Mm-hmm.
Kids love it, and then there's a lot of stuff that they're not going to understand, and they just ignore it. And then adults get this sort of satire and more advanced humor. So I tried to write the book thinking, I want to communicate at a level where the average high school student will get a lot out of it, but even scientists will get a lot out of it too.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think you did a great job with it.
Thank you.
Not that you need my
Thank you,
approval.
Jordan.
But yeah, thank you once again for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Jordan. Good to see you.